Medical records reflect that one doctor is responsible for a third of vaccination exemptions in the San Diego Unified School District. Her reasons and a look at the data. Tijuana residents are finding a different use for the razor wire installed by the Trump administration at the border. Why they're committing theft for safety. And living beachside on the cheap with $1 million view. Why van life is becoming more appealing. I'm Mark Sauer. The KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome to our discussion of the week's top stories. I'm Mark Sauer, and joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today, reporter Will Huntsberry from The Voice of San Diego, reporter Peter Rowe from the Union Tribune, and reporter Wendy Fry also from the San Diego Union Tribune. Well, the number of San Diego parents skeptical of vaccines for their children appears to be rapidly growing. State public health records show kindergartners granted exceptions to vaccination requirements has tripled in the county in the past few years. And one San Diego doctor is in the eye of the storm of controversy over vaccinating children. So we'll start there. Who is this doctor and how many medical exemptions has she written?
So her name is Dr. Tara Zandvliet, and she has written far and away more medical exemptions than any other doctor in this area. About a third of the 500, roughly 500 that have been written for San Diego Unified. I think the next closest doctor is like 26. So Zandvliet really has the market cornered. It seems to be like a snowball effect. People hear she's the person who will hear their concerns about it. She ends up getting all the business, and so a really high number from one doctor.
All right, we're going to get a little more detail on her and that practice now, but give us a bit of background under California law. Kids are required to be vaccinated before starting school, and what are some of the common diseases they're vaccinated for?
Right. So kids are required to be vaccinated, and there's quite a few of them. I think there's at least 12 different vaccines, but then they need several. You just need several different shots sometimes.
Okay.
But
so we're talking measles and mumps.
Measles, mumps, and the more serious ones that people like me have totally, and all of us have forgotten about, like polio. Totally gone. Or there's even a vaccine for meningitis, like a very deadly disease.
Okay. And how could parents get their kids exempted from having to have these vaccinations?
So before 2015, you could just get out of it from a personal belief exemption. Just sign a paper, I don't believe in vaccines, I'm not going to get my child vaccinated. That changed in 2015, and all of a sudden, no more personal belief exemptions were allowed. So now you have to go to a doctor, you have to get a medical exemption, written on a slip of paper and take it to the school district, and that's the only way you're getting out of the vaccines.
And it's been in the news a lot lately, all over the place. You've seen some spikes in some of these diseases since kids aren't getting vaccinated as commonly as they were.
Absolutely. Measles, we're hearing about it all over the country now. Portland, Washington State, New York City, and even Dr. Zandvliet, she acknowledges that these measles outbreaks seem to be taking off. At first, she said it was something she wasn't very worried about. It's something we seem to have gotten rid of in the United States, but she acknowledges it's a problem now.
Pete?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is Dr. Zandvliet, does she not believe in the efficacy of vaccinations, or is she just doing what these patients want her to do?
So that's a great question. She definitely does believe in the efficacy of vaccines, she says. That being said, she also is getting a lot of the clientele who are people who don't believe it all. She says her goal is to talk everyone into it. Let's make sure they get their vaccinations and everything. The reasons she's using for these vaccines, I think, are where the issue gets murky, right? There's a list of reasons to get a medical exemption that's put out by the CDC, and most doctors agree on what that is.
What would be a couple of the things?
So if you had an autoimmune disease yourself, or if you were being treated for cancer, there's also a small subset of the population who vaccines don't even work for them, so they're always at risk when other people don't get vaccinated too.
Okay, but these exemptions are broader than those specific reasons.
Exactly, yes. So the reason that she is relying on is a family history of autoimmune diseases, and there's a small pocket of physicians, I guess you'd say, in this state who are using that as a reason. It's basically a theory they have that, you know, if you have a family history of autoimmune conditions, you're more likely to have a bad reaction to a vaccine. But I talk to other doctors who are like, this is absolutely just a theory. There's no evidence whatsoever to back that up. And I'll just give you one other of Dr. Zanfleet's theories. You know, in the past, she had said, right, I know there's no link to autism from vaccines, but maybe, you know, maybe it's a trigger, the vaccine, that sets off the autism. There was a study that completely debunked that about a month and a half ago. She totally admitted, you know, she was wrong about that theory.
All right, and to be clear, she denies most of the requests for exemptions for vaccines, right?
She said she denies about 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10, okay. And you touched on this, you mentioned, you interviewed an infectious disease specialist, and what's he saying about the reasoning with Dr. Zanvliet and other doctors who have this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, he's saying that they're relying on a theory, and by relying on that theory, they're putting the rest of the public, especially school children, in danger. They're creating little pockets where an outbreak could happen, like we're seeing in the rest of the country. Portland, Washington, like we saw in Disneyland in 2014, like we saw in San Diego in 2008 when that measles outbreak happened. A child with the measles went to the emergency room. There was a 10-month-old there who wasn't old enough for his vaccines yet. He got the measles. I mean, so that's what's at stake.
That's what happens. Wendy?
Do they track with data at a state level of where these pockets are? Because I know, like, any parent will tell you it's kind of cumbersome to keep track of all those shots you mentioned. There's lots, and all they give you at the pediatrics office is like a yellow sheet of paper that you're supposed to keep it and track it and bring it every time you go to the doctor. Do they keep it in a computerized system where they can tell you where these pockets are of kids that are
it's totally. And, you know, with San Diego Unified, for instance, we've got 12 schools, I listed them in the story, where the vaccination rate for measles is under 95%. 14 schools where the vaccination rate for whooping cough is under 95%. You need that 95% so disease won't spread.
That's kind of the tipping point then. What about the doctor herself? She's kind of gotten this known as this vax-friendly doctor. How's it affected her personally?
Well, you know, personally, she was at first a little upset to learn we were doing the story. She said because she's listed on vax-friendly websites, she's already gotten death threats. You know, this is obviously an issue with some kind of intractable beliefs on both sides. And that was kind of the scary thing I noticed covering it. I mean, I've gotten a lot of feedback, a bit more negative than positive.
Okay.
I was going to ask, if she has children, has she had her own children vaccinated?
She has. She has. Good point. So I think she is putting her money where her mouth is there.
All right. Short time left on this segment. The medical board, the state medical board, concerned about doctors maybe giving too many exemptions here and statewide?
I think the medical board is concerned, but they have a lot of trouble doing something about it. There's one doctor, Dr. Bob Sears from Orange County. He's been sanctioned for inappropriately giving one of these. They told me they were going to take a close look at my list, and you know, a state senator has said he may try to strengthen the medical board's ability to get records to do something about this. We'll see where it all goes.
And the legislator who made these restrictions recently, a doctor himself, he's not keen on this reasoning, right?
No. Dr. Pan is his name, and he is not keen on this at all. He has actually put in a bill. He's going to try to close this medical exemption, what's become a loophole, basically. The other option I think he has, people may not like it, but there will basically be a central authority or a county authority who will have to approve these medical exemptions.
All right, good story. We'll see how this plays out going forward. All right, we're going to move on. At the behest of Homeland Security, U.S. troops last fall strung sharp concertina wire atop existing barriers along our border. Donald Trump heralded the installation of the reinforcing wire. He invited news crews to film it, and then Trump admired it at one of his rallies.
And I noticed all that beautiful barbed wire going up today. It was barbed wire used properly can be a beautiful sight. Well,
now some of that beautiful barbed wire, that razor wire, has gone missing, and it has to be replaced. And Wendy, start there. What has happened to this shiny new wire at the border?
Right. So it's not barbed wire. It's the razor wire. So that is being stolen right now, and that's being taken by thieves in Tijuana, and they are reselling it. So they're going around house to house saying, I can put this up for you, 40 pesos, and I'll put it all around your house. And the residents, so far that we found, have been saying they unwittingly, bought this stolen wire.
Right. And so how do Mexican authorities know it's the same wire that was put up there by U.S. Homeland Security and not just barbed wire you can buy at, Walmart?
Right, so it's very specific. It's like got about an inch wire, razor on either side like this, on either side of the little thing that it goes into, and so it's more strong. It's meant to cause injury if somebody goes through it, and you can't buy it at any home improvement store at TJ.
It's very obvious that this is the wire
Yes.
the U.S. Folks have put up, and
Yes.
they can see it just on site. It's very obvious.
Right, they've actually recovered some of it from the houses and given it back to Homeland Security.
And people are getting arrested down there. Tell us about that, and is this from pressure from the United States?
About 15 to 20 people were arrested. I do think that the United States initially were the ones to bring it to the attention of the Mexican law enforcement, and then they set up surveillance and started watching at the night to see who was going up there to steal it.
And you talked to some Mexican authorities, and you asked them about who specifically has been arrested. What do they tell you?
Right. I asked, what nationality and if they were from Mexico, and they said mostly Mexicans that have been in the United States and been deported, and they're living sort of right there by the line, by the border, and they're doing it to just make a little bit of money, however much money that they can make in a day. So almost homeless people.
So they go out at night and they steal the wire and resell it down there.
Right.
In homeowners, and back to the arrests, it's the folks kind of that are stealing it, or are they arresting homeowners too, or both?
Right now they've just arrested people that have stolen it, and they're putting it out to residents not to buy it because it is a stolen material. There was one report in El Sol, the Spanish language newspaper, and it said that it interviewed a couple residents on one street and found that it was actually a North American, blonde, blue-eyed guy living down there in TJ that was going from house to house with a shopping cart full of the razor.
Selling the razor wire.
While the director of the border liaison team said it was a majority Mexican nationals that are stealing it, there seems to be at least one North American guy too.
And I want to talk for a minute about why this is suddenly so desirable in Tijuana, because the numbers on the violence down there are extraordinary.
Yes, it has been a record year. Never in the history of TJ has there been so many murders or so much crime and violence.
Right. And what are some of those figures? I was seeing that in the month of January alone, it's normally what you see in a year.
Right. So far in March is 106. So there were 7 on Wednesday, between Wednesday and Thursday. So 8 between Wednesday and Thursday murders, and it's not gone down. I think it was about 2,400 for the year last year in 2018. And even though the National Guard has come to TJ, to the new program set up by the new president of Mexico, that has not impacted the numbers yet. So it's actually still going up.
Still very violent. Pete?
Yeah, so this is one of the ironies of this story, is that it turns out there is a crisis at the border, and it's a crisis that in part is being addressed by the concertina wire.
Yeah, it's on the other side of the border.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good point. Now, you interviewed some Tijuana residents. What did they have to say about this whole situation?
Right. So like I said, some said they had no idea. They were just unaware. They're just buying they said that the people that were selling it for very cheap. So they thought it was a good deal. And also, some of these neighborhoods, you want to understand too, in Tijuana are very opportunistic about materials. So they also build retaining walls out of used discard tires from California that are carted to the line and resold. Or they'll build stairs or the front of their homes out of any material that's available.
Okay. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about, this was a big story leading up to the election. Donald Trump was talking about on the stump. We just played a bite from that rally. Haven't heard too much about U.S. soldiers and troops, with the wire stringing it. I think we had a story yesterday about them being deployed now to help in the wildfire mitigation and the forest activities and all. But there was an LA Times story yesterday about the Marines commandant. There were memos that were leaked complaining that Trump's border deployment is affecting troop readiness as far as the Marines are concerned.
Right. I haven't seen a lot of the troops, of the U.S. troops anymore at the border. I saw them right in November and December. You know, I saw the video of them installing that wire, but I haven't seen the presence of them down there. But it's certainly the wire sort of represents another effort to strengthen the border.
Right, and of course we've talked a lot and been a lot of national news on Trump's, he shut down the government for a while, he's declared an emergency and now defied Congress at the border. He's trying to take some military funds to build that wall and all, but this seems like a more immediate story about this wire and just what they've done to enhance the wall than even the building of the wall.
Right. I think the irony of the reason why it's resonating with so many people is because rather than Mexico paying for the wall, the U.S. Trump and the U.S. us by extension are actually paying for people to put walls up in Mexico around their own houses. So
right.
It is ironic for
You're
sure.
Right. For a whole different need down there. It's security, as we've talked about. Well, we're about out of time on this, but might we start hearing different chants at Trump's rallies now? Maybe restring the wire instead of build the wall? We'll have to see going forward. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to hear that soon. All right, we are going to move on now. Our next story is so San Diego. It has the sea and the sand and free spirits living the California dream while beating our ridiculous housing costs by doing it all on the cheap. People are living in their vans and seaside parking lots thanks to a green light from the San Diego City Council last month. And Pete, start there. That's such a fascinating story. What did you expect when you headed out to the beach to do the reporting on the story, and what did you find?
Yeah, I was very surprised by the population. First of all, there's so many people living in vans or in RVs in these beach parking lots. And what you find is that, like any neighborhood anywhere, there's a whole range of people doing this. So you have your good neighbors, you know, who are in really nice vans that keep them up well. And then you have your kind of problem neighbors who are in these junk heaps. Maybe there are 3 guys sleeping in the back of a van with 2 dogs. Virtually everyone travels with 1 or more dog. You know, it's just a wild group of people who were there for different reasons.
And you're not seeing a lot of families down there, though. Tough.
I wasn't seeing families. I interviewed a woman who had lived with her 3 children in a car for 3 years, but she stayed away from the beach. She was kind of afraid of the beach because there are actually 4 parking lots inland that are patrolled, that offer counseling on jobs and housing, that have lighted bathrooms, places for you to plug in your electronic devices. That's where she went with her children because she felt safer there. But at the beach, I found mostly single guys.
Yeah, characterize these folks. Who are you seeing down there?
Well, okay, like I say, there's a range of people. So there are latter-day hippies. There are a couple of vans. When you approached, you were hit immediately with the marijuana smell. And they're kind of, as you say, I mean, these are your typical free spirits. They're traveling up and down the coast, and they love it. They're having a great time. I found others who are kind of maybe mid-career professionals who decided they were going to sell their homes and just kind of hit the road and see the countryside. And there were others who were even younger, who are, you know, just maybe surfers, you know, going up and down the coast.
All right, Will.
So Pete, you know, I think, you know, these people kind of can get a bad rap. It's like a scourge in our community. But what were you hearing from them about how they were treated by people who have homes in the area? You know, I mean, I live in OB. I've heard of people getting harassed by the neighbors before. Did you hear anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, some of them were talking about how they were disrespected, and people would come into the parking lot and give them a hard time, tell them that they really need to move on. And in fact, they do need to move on every day. The parking lots have limited hours where you can actually be there. The change in the law didn't affect that. The change in the law just makes it legal for you to be asleep in your vehicle. You can do that now. But I mean, at the Ocean Beach parking lot where I caught most of these people, between 2 and 4 a.m., you have to be gone.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit, your story kind of broke this down on the council changed this just just last month, as I said at the open, and there was some resistance during that debate before council, right? And the rules were not everybody's crazy about it.
Well, that's an understatement. I mean, there are a lot of folks who are crazy mad about it, who feel like this is a terrible thing, and they're saying wait till summer comes. These parking lots are already difficult for locals to find a spot to park in. They say wait till summer comes and you've got even more people parked there.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to get a little bit more into the rules here, but I want to play this bite we have. KPBS went down to Ocean Beach and kind of followed your lead there, and we've got a montage of some of these folks. Let's hear what they have to say here.
I do what I want.
I really love this lifestyle, I think because of the amount of self-growth that I experience within myself.
Waking up in a new spot all the time is pretty awesome.
That's nice.
I get along with people who live in vans more than I get along with anybody. I felt very confined, and when I told my friends about how I felt confined, nobody understood me at the time. So I met some travelers, and I hit the road.
Our philosophy is more so just like focusing on building a foundation that's more tangible and that we can create for ourselves rather than like paying somebody rent for something that we're never gonna own.
There's a part of me that kind of misses the luxuries of like having a set spot, but like my house moves. It's pretty messy in here.
Having a work studio like at the beach or in the forest or wherever, because we make art inside the bus, so we just pull up and we've got a kitchen in there and we just hang out, make food and art and enjoy the view.
It's got a bed in the back, hardwood floor, some cabinets to hold my books, and I keep all my kitchen gear in the back so I can just open it up, pull everything out, cook a delicious meal for me or my friends. And gets horrible gas mileage. It's very messy inside. I was actually just now cleaning it. It's so messy I wouldn't show anybody.
This is pretty much like full vehicle life right here though. It gets messy every day. So we have to clean every day. As far as vehicle living goes, I would definitely go for a bus.
A couple of things there. Those folks weren't identified in those clips, and not a lot of them are crazy about giving their full names and all. Is there a stigma to this whole thing?
Yes, one of the van livers that I spoke with is a semi-retired songwriter. She had sold her home in Nashville and set out. She's got a beautiful van. It's like 2 years old. It's got every convenience you could want. And she said when she steps out of the van, she sometimes feels a little gross. It's like, oh, here come the van people. You know, they're kind of like these mole people. So yeah, I think there is a little bit of maybe discrimination against the van people. They feel that they've been stigmatized.
But as you say, not everything's a rust bucket down there. There's different kinds.
No, but I mean, even the folks who have really nice vans, really nice vehicles, they say it's not for everyone. You spend a lot of time looking for water. Had one van person say you don't realize how much water you go through in a typical day until you don't have running water. There's also a question, even in San Diego, about staying warm, staying comfortable at night. Most of your vans aren't really insulated like a home.
Right, and of course we've had a cold and rainy winter, not that comfortable down there. I wanted to ask you about safety. Are cops on the beat down there? Or incidents happen? That can happen in any neighborhood, but this is a unique neighborhood.
Yeah, cops are on the beat. Some of the van people complained that they don't get the kind of respect from cops. Instead, they're hassled by the cops. The photographer Howard Lippin and I, we were there when a police officer came by, but really to tell one of these guys to put the dog on the leash, which is a law. Not
a serious incident there, but you heard about some rough incidents, did you not?
We heard about some. It was kind of hard to really judge, how serious this was. More serious, I think, were assaults that took place within the parking lot, sometimes among the van people themselves. So you get a range of people, and some of them are not all there.
Yeah, and again, the the whole dynamic could certainly change come summer, as you mentioned earlier. I do want to ask you, we had a little bit of time left, of one other thing you learned about this whole lifestyle, which is jugging, gas jugging. What is that?
Right. The guy says, well, we don't have to spend any money on gas. We just go jugging. And I look kind of blank, and he said, okay, here's how it works. He says, if you go to a gas station and you ask someone, hey, give me a couple of bucks, so I can fill up my van, chances are they're not going to give you any money. On the other hand, if you show up with a jug and someone is already pumping gas and they say, would you mind filling my jug with gas? He said, you'd be surprised how many people are happy to do it for you.
All right, well, we're out of time. Hey, buddy, can you spare a gallon? That's great. That's a good story. Well, that does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Will Huntsberry of the Voice of San Diego, Peter Rowe of the San Diego Union Tribune, and Wendy Fry, also of the Union Tribune. And a reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.